Welcome to B&B Movie Reviews. This week we fight corruption at Rebel Ridge and we summon the ghost with the most after 36 years.
James McAvoy will test our patience, and Transformers goes back to Optimus and Megatron, the early years. Don't go anywhere. B&B is coming up next.
Saying that someone called Beetlejuice.
Don't say his name. If you say his name 3 times, he will appear.
I know this is a big step for you, but in the words of Dr. Glickman, I'm going to give you the push you need. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Is that
Beetlejuice.
First of all, I want you two kids to know this is a safe space, okay? Feel free to express yourself. Don't be afraid. I sense there's an enabler here, but we'll get to that.
Rory fails to listen to Lydia when she tries to warn him about summoning Beetlejuice in Tim Burton's long-awaited sequel, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Don't say it the third time.
Don't say it a third time.
Don't say it the third time, Brad.
No, please don't. Please don't.
Please don't. No. We don't need that mischievous demon to come up. But no, 36 years, man.
It's a long time between movies.
I know. And, you know, we've talked about these legacy sequels for a while. And to have this one come back, and some of them have hit, some of them haven't. This one comes back, Tim Burton comes back. You bring a lot of the original cast back. I don't know, man. What are your thoughts, man?
You know, I love the original Beetlejuice. I don't know how you feel about the original film, but it's an iconic movie, right?
Love that movie.
And I think obviously a lot of people really enjoyed it because they came back in droves for the sequel, $100 million opening weekend. That's absurd.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Michael Keaton. He still understands this character.
He does.
He's fascinating to watch. I think the structure of this film is very messy. I think there are 3 or 4, maybe even 5 plot lines that are too many. But the things that I liked about it, I really liked.
That's the thing that I kind of wanted to focus on. And I know when we saw the movie, I had mentioned that the movie felt a little undercooked, and I think that was part of it is because
or overcooked. Right? Because it's been so many years. They've had a ton of different screenwriters cranking out different versions of this movie. And I think we see many versions in this one film.
That makes sense because there are so many different subplots and storylines, and they're trying to juggle so much. It's not satisfying to the audience.
No. And I'm really frustrated with how these legacy sequels bring in the next generation. It's always a conflict between parent and child. And I think this movie does an incredible disservice to the original Lydia, played by Winona Ryder in both films. Making her kind of like this pathetic, lost creature when she was the coolest cat of the bunch in the original movie.
Exactly, you're right, because this is a mother-daughter story, and I think that's the crux of this story. And again, they kind of circle around that and not really make that the meat of this story. Now, I love Beetlejuice, and I think Michael Keaton is great. I love what Tim Burton is doing with some of the visual effects and bringing in practical effects back in. But it's just the storyline, and then like how they manage a lot of these characters.
Well, the Justin Theroux character manipulating Lydia, like we got to get married and we got to get married now. Your dad's just died. Let's get married. And it's such a cringe plot, but then it's surrounded by all this other stuff. And Beetlejuice, I feel like, comes into the movie too early. I wish we had built a little bit more to him and Lydia reconnecting, and that being the moment when Beetlejuice appears. We bring him in so early, and the plot with him and his ex-wife, played by Monica Bellucci, honestly, for me, wasn't doing anything. I think Monica Bellucci is great, but did we need that story at all?
No, I don't believe we did. And there's a lot of new characters that they bring in outside of Monica Bellucci. I mean, Willem Dafoe, and I don't know how much we want to give away about his character, but he's having a blast. And I really enjoy
He's
what
one of the
Dafoe
characters I don't think needs to be in this film, but
yes.
he is having a blast. And Willem Dafoe is incredibly watchable, and I love the makeup effects that they have on his face and his silly, actor plot line that he has in the afterlife is charming.
Yeah, man, it's just like, and the way this movie tries to replicate a lot of the scenes from the original movie. I mean, it's part of like, it's really iconic that Harry Belafonte, Deo scene from the original movie.
Yeah.
And they try to do something in this movie to kind of replicate that.
It doesn't work.
And it just falls flat. It doesn't work.
And I understand why they had to kill off Jeffrey Jones's character, the father, right?
Yeah.
Because of the very dark history of that actor.
Yeah.
But then they keep, they find a clever way to get rid of his face, but then they keep showing his picture over and over and over again, and I have to keep thinking about the dark history of Jeffrey Jones.
Exactly, and I don't understand the choice by Tim Burton knowing.
I think there's venom there. Like, let's not just kill him this way. Let's also bite his head off with a shark. I feel like there's some animosity and rightful animosity towards the actor. So let's butcher his character.
I didn't think about it in that way, so that does make sense to maybe kind of take that character and that actor and let's butcher him in this movie in that way. I mean,
it's so ugly, and it's something I just don't want to be thinking about when I'm watching Beetlejuice.
Exactly.
It takes the gore factor up a notch or two. You're talking about the practical effects. We get lots of guts, but we get geysers of blood.
Yeah.
And we have a birthing sequence in this film that I don't want to talk about too much, but I've been thinking about it a lot. It has haunted me.
Yeah, I had totally forgot about that.
I don't know how, Bryan.
Thanks for reminding me. Now that's seared back into my brain. But yeah, it does push that PG-13 rating.
I don't know how it's PG-13.
I know.
There's a geyser of blood.
But it's interesting though, because it does that, it almost pushes the way that the original movie pushed the PG rating. This movie is doing that as well. But I don't know, what's your overall rating for this movie?
Well, we're the B&B show.
Yep.
If we love something, we give it a B+. If we're not so in love with it, we give it a B-. For me, Beetlejuice just didn't do it. It's 36 years too late for me, so I gotta go B-.
Yeah, I mean, the multiple plot lines and how all of those kind of fall short just doesn't work for me, and it just doesn't recapture the magic of that first movie that I loved. So it's a B- for me as well. So yeah, those are our thoughts on Beetlejuice. Don't say it a third time. When we return, Netflix has a new action thriller type movie with an incredible lead. Stay right there. We'll review Rebel Ridge when we return.
Beetlejuice.
Every minute counts in a poison emergency. That's why Poison Help is standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in over 100 languages. Save Poison Help as a contact in your phone today. Call your local Poison Center at 1-800-222-1222.
On the ground.
Wait, hold on. You hit me.
Get on your fucking face now.
Okay.
Stay on your belly.
Tell me what's going on.
Just stay on your belly. 108, 1026, pursuit terminated on Coleman Road, south side of Burton Creek Bridge, possible 1052.
Pursuit?
I never even saw you, officer. I would have stopped. Arms out. Arms out like a fucking airplane.
Terry Richmond is in a race against the clock to bail out his cousin when he gets stopped by the police in the riveting action thriller Rebel Ridge. Out now on Netflix, Bryan.
Yes.
Directed by Jeremy Saulnier, who directed Green Room, Blue Ruin, Hold the Dark. I was less of a fan of that movie.
Yeah.
But those first two are some of my favorite thrillers. And man, he came back strong with Rebel Ridge.
He did. I really enjoyed Rebel Ridge. And I like, you talk about come back strong. This movie opens up. I mean, this movie grabs you in like the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say this right now. For me, I think the first act of this film is probably the best first act that I've seen all year long. I mean, it is riveting. It grabs you. It definitely has something to say about this character and the situation that he is in. As the movie kind of goes along, you know, it seems like Jeremy Saulnier is kind of interested in some other ideas, you know, especially when it comes to like the civil forfeiture that he's talking about in this movie. But I think as a contained thriller with what happens in that first act, I just think this is remarkable.
I think the first act is one of the best first acts of the year. I like the movie all the way through.
Okay.
I think there is a dip in terms of like pacing, but I appreciated that dip, and I liked what the story was exploring with the civil forfeiture.
Yeah.
I think that this movie, initially when I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is Rambo 2024, or First Blood, really, 2024.
Yeah.
You know, this very highly experienced and deadly soldier gets messed with the cops, and they don't really appreciate or respect the power that he is bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And they unleash a beast. But that movie is actually, it goes someplace else in the second act.
Yeah.
And as you learn a little bit more about Terry Richmond and his philosophy and his relationship with violence and anger, I think the movie goes up a notch, personally, for me, in the last act.
No, you're right, because I like kind of how the movie kind of switches as far as like where you think his character is going to go, but how his character actually is. I mean, you talk about, you know, the police are, you know, the force that feels like they're kind of escalating the situation. And Terry Richmond, even with his particular set of skills, is all about de-escalation.
Right, yeah.
And
he's not a bomb that goes off. Like
Yes.
he's slowing things down. You know, they're coming at him with violence and deadly weapons, and he doesn't necessarily return the favor. He does something different, while also maintaining the tropes of an action film.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anything like that. And there is a one shot in this movie that tracks him going through a smog of tear gas and de-escalating the situation in a brutal fashion sometimes that is unforgettable.
It's amazing. And going to Terry Richmond, I want to talk a little bit about Aaron Pierre, because this feels like this is a coming out party for him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this guy has charisma to boot. I mean, he is incredible. He has such screen presence. And he was in M. Night Shyamalan's Old, I believe.
Mid-sized sedan was his name.
Mid-sized sedan. After this, seeing him in this, you're right, I'll watch him in anything, because his screen presence is undeniable, and you feel like there's a star being born here.
Yeah, I do think that the racial politics of Rebel Ridge is a little awkward and not well thought out, because Jeremy Saulnier's script is so concerned with the civil forfeiture and the sin of that. It misses talking about the racial dynamics and the racism of this town. The movie's called Rebel Ridge, but that's about as like biting as the movie gets in terms of race.
Because when the movie opens up, that to me, that feels like that's the forefront of the story there.
And we almost leave race completely behind after the opening scene.
And again, that's why I'm like, I think he's caught up with that civil asset which I think is a real thing that needs to be explored and need to be talked about. But because of the characters and the setting, it feels like you kind of left something to be desired.
I think because of the point of view of the director and the story he wanted to tell, he really didn't want to focus in on that. But I don't think you can ignore it.
You can't ignore it. You can't ignore that.
That being said, one of the best action films of this year, again.
Okay.
The opening scene, the script, the dialogue between Terry Richmond and the sheriff at the middle point of this movie, when he grabs that gun and lowers it.
What's your rating for it?
Oh, it's a huge B+.
Yeah, this is easily a B+ for me as well. This is a great ride, and it's on Netflix. Check it out. So a B+ for me. So, yeah, those are our thoughts on Rebel Ridge. When we come back, James McAvoy is really going to test our patience with our politeness with Speak No Evil. So stay right there. Is that what he's doing?
Be safe, look after yourself, and look after one another.
Luis, we need to get out of here now. Luis, what are you doing?
Everything okay
in there?
Yeah, we're all good.
Anything we can get you?
No, we'll just be a minute. We can't let on. Yeah? We can't look stressed or scared. We just have to go out there and be completely normal.
When Louise, Ben, and Agnes come to the frightening realization that their vacation friends are not what they seem, they have to play coy to try and make a clean getaway in Blumhouse's latest horror thriller, Speak No Evil. Brad?
Yes?
Let me tell you, when the trailers for this movie came out, I had no desire to see this movie.
And they played this trailer in front of every film. I was so sick of this trailer.
I was over. I just wanted September 13th to get here so I could not see this trailer again. And me and you have talked about, like, this is a remake of a Danish film that came out 2 years ago.
Which neither of us have seen.
I haven't seen that, and I've heard how brutal that Danish film is. And then we had talked about, like, I'm not really in the mood to see something.
When we got the press invite to the screening, I was like, I don't know, Bryan. Like, do we want to talk about this movie?
I'm like, I was not looking forward to seeing this movie. That being said, we go into this movie, I had a blast.
This is one of my favorite movies of the year. I cannot believe I'm saying that.
Dude.
This movie is incredibly uncomfortable.
Yes.
You know, this storyline of, you know, Scoot McNairy and Mackenzie Davis, these Americans living in London, they go on a vacation. Their relationship is a little on the rocks, and then they meet James McAvoy's family. And James McAvoy is, like, how would you describe his personality in the first few moments of this film when we meet him?
Wow, his first few moments, when he takes that beach chair.
Yeah, there's an aggression, obviously.
There's an aggression.
But it's an aggression that comes with a smile and a charisma that is attractive.
Yeah, it's definitely attractive to Scoot McNairy.
Yes.
I think that he sees a lot of who he thinks he wants to be.
Yeah, well, like Scoot McNairy at the opening of this film is feeling emasculated.
Yes.
Whether that's actually true or not.
Yeah.
You know, we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
And he is attracted to the power that McAvoy brings.
He's a force of nature.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happens over the course of this film is that they are lured into a friendship with with McAvoy's family through just an inability to say no. They want to be polite, and they don't want to offend anyone. So they basically dance their way into the lion's den.
And that's what I think is what the movie is actually speaking to, is how far that you can push, how far you can push the goalpost back as far as your politeness. And with how James McAvoy is, you know, he sees that these people are too nice, and when do you draw the line and say no? And it's like, and they don't. And it's almost like, and they're putting themselves in the dangerous situation that they're in.
The movie drags, to use that word, drags the audience and Scoot McNairy and Mackenzie Davis and their daughter to the very end. Really, like, only in the last act do you realize, well, do they realize what danger they're actually in? We've seen the trailer 1,000 times, so we know McAvoy's a bad dude, and his wife's a bad dude, and we're just waiting for, like, the knives to come out, and it takes a long time for, like, the real violence to appear. And for me, I found it hilarious.
But that's the fun of it, because, and I think that's what this movie does brilliantly, from what I've heard from the original film, that is extremely violent and extremely brutal.
And goes to a different place, apparently.
It goes to a different place. But this movie decided to take a different route by really kind of, you know, zeroing in on the uncomfortableness of the situation, but how fun and how funny that can
anxiety
be.
Laughter that occurs in the audience, right? You know, that screening that we saw it with, you know, there was a lot of laughter. And that laughter carried all the way to the point where someone's being, you know, nearly drowned.
Exactly.
And you shouldn't be laughing now, but I couldn't help myself.
And it's funny too, because we talk about the prolonged tension, because sometimes when you watch the trailer and you know where it's going to go, and the way that this movie plays with the audience and plays with the characters, the way James McAvoy is kind of playing with us, it's like sometimes that can come off as being like, okay, get to the point, get to it. But it's like it's almost like the movie has a nice little nod and a wink to us because it's playing with us as well.
Yeah.
So it's like we're waiting for that moment where the other shoe to drop, but they prolong that tension and they keep prolonging it. That like that one sequence with the ladder.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just like, okay, is this it?
Yeah,
it's like, no, this ain't it. Is this it?
Yeah.
And it's just
There's like 15 moments where you're like, oh, it's about to pop off, and
yes,
it doesn't.
And it doesn't. And it's just
and
like,
every time it didn't, I was like, this movie's great. And maybe this says more about me and how I'm a demented freak, but I think of this film really as a comedy. And it works for me as a comedy. It's extremely disturbing.
Yeah.
It goes into incredibly dark places.
Yeah.
But even in that darkness, there is a little bit of joy from the audience perspective.
Yes.
Not from the characters.
Not from the characters. No, from the audience, definitely. What is your rating for this?
Oh, it's a huge B+. One of my favorite movies of the year.
Dude, I'm so shocked, man. This is the B+. It is one of my favorite movies of the year. Like the way you were surprised a couple of weeks ago with Jackpot, you said that was a total surprise. This is a total surprise for me.
Yeah.
B+. Yeah. So when we come back, it's Water Meets the Eye when we talk about those Transformers. Stay right there.
Oh boy.
Going to cheerleading camp next to the abandoned insane asylum, it's like throwing the blood away.
50% of Americans like watching blood get spilled in horror movies, but only 3% donated.
Now that's scary.
The Iacon 5000 has begun.
Sorry, are those miners in the race?
Miners! Those are miners like us! Can't believe what I'm seeing here. There are miners trying to run in the Iacon 5000. This is insane!
There's miners in the race!
Miners? They can't even transform!
It's Orion Pax D16!
This is a first in Iacon 5000 history. How are they going to survive?
Orion Pax and D16 enter the Iacon race, the first of their kind, inspiring other miners on Cybertron in the animated movie Transformers 1. Bryan, are you ready to hear a 45-year-old man's opinion about robots?
Give it to me, man.
I've got them, and they are strong. I love Transformers, grew up on Transformers.
Same.
To this day, I read Transformers comic,
Yeah.
the Daniel Warren Johnson, Jorge Corona book from Skybound Books.
Okay.
They're not sponsoring this show, but they should be. That book is amazing. Everyone should be reading it.
Yeah.
This film is a kid's movie.
It's a kid's movie.
And I recognize that. It's a comedy. It's a buddy comedy.
Buddy comedy. I can get on board. I can get on board with that.
Keegan-Michael Key is Bumblebee, although they never say Bumblebee, he's just Bee. I hate it.
Okay, you're not the only one.
I don't like the comedy in this at all. I think the animation looks like when you go to Disneyland, or actually when you go to Universal Studios and you go on a ride like the Mummy ride, and then there's like that really shoddy
I like the Mummy ride.
animatics. This feels like a theme park ride animation to me. Not a fan.
Okay, that's
your rebuttal, sir.
I was gonna let you keep going. No, animation, I will agree. When that first trailer came out, we had talked about it. You had texted me. You was like, I don't think I'm a big fan of this. And even watching the movie, after knowing the animation style, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I'm not even the biggest fan of the way this movie is shot.
Look, when you watch that trailer, you go like, okay, well, this is not for me, and that's okay.
And
it doesn't need to be for me.
Because ultimately it comes down to the story. And I was curious about seeing this story about Megatron and Optimus, D16 and Orion Pax, their friendship, and what happens, how their friendship splits, and the different directions they end up going. And when you get into this movie, to me, the story that they're telling feels a bit predictable. Like, once they introduce certain characters and you see which way the story is going, you kind of know where the story is going to end up. That's okay to a degree.
Yeah, I think they play with the tension of this friendship eventually falling apart really well.
Yeah.
And I think Brian Tyree Henry's voice performance as D16, aka Megatron, is great.
Yeah.
I'm less excited about what Chris Hemsworth is doing. But I think the arc of their friendship and break is handled well.
Yeah.
Now, my biggest problem with this movie, it actually extends from the title, which is Transformers 1.
Okay.
And throughout the film, they reference a lot of Transformer slogans. We get more than meets the eye. Yeah. We get a reference to the power of the touch, from the original movie's score. At the end, throughout the film, they say "till all are one" a bunch, which is the core philosophy of Transformers. Now, what's weird about talking about "till all are one" in an origin story is that Cybertron hasn't had its civil war yet, right? So what we're seeing the beginning of the split, which will eventually become the Decepticons and the Autobots, and the war for Cybertron. And Optimus Prime, Orion Pax, has always been about unity, and they talk about unity a lot in this film.
Okay.
But at the very end of this movie, slight spoilers, they say there are some decisions you can never walk away from, referencing that D16 Megatron has taken a path that will never bring him back to where Orion Pax Optimus Prime is.
Exactly. Okay.
Optimus Prime would never say that. Optimus Prime is about radical forgiveness.
Okay.
Optimus Prime is battling to bring the Decepticons back into the fold to unite Cybertron. That's the story of Transformers, according to this 45-year-old man.
That makes a lot of sense, and I could see your point, because we don't have that civil war between the Decepticons and the Autobots, because this is the battle, the war with the Quintessons. I couldn't think of that name, but it's the battle with the Quintessons.
Yeah, which I always said quintessence as a kid.
Yeah. No, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for me, I didn't dive that deep into it, but it makes a lot of sense with what you're saying. I also like a lot of some of the thematic elements that this movie is kind of playing with as well. I mean, this is a kids movie, but when you're talking about, the Transformers or these bots as minors who can't transform, and what some of the primes are doing in Iacon, the city, it feels like an enslavement story.
Yes.
This also feels like a story that's about people rising up against, their enslavement.
Yeah, I mean, they chant multiple times towards the end of this climax, "Rise up, rise up."
Yeah, and I found that really to be really compelling, that you're able to kind of bring in a lot of those themes into an animated movie.
Also, this idea of systemic oppression from Sentinel Prime. Before you're born, before you're activated, he's removing the cogs and taking away your power. And lying to the people. And all of that extremely compelling.
Yeah.
My enjoyment of this film was like a roller coaster, where I was like,
And I love how they kind of justify a lot of, they made a lot of stuff make sense within the Transformers lore. Like, the emblems of the Decepticons and the Autobots.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
They didn't really do a good job with the Autobots.
They didn't do a good job.
They did a great job with the Decepticons.
They did do a job with the Decepticons. Now, when there's a post-credit scene that was like, because I was waiting, I was like, man, you're doing such a good job of explaining a lot of this stuff as far as the lore. Like, I want to know where you get I don't want to give too much away, but when you get to the post-credit scene, I'm like,
the word Autobot just appears out of nowhere at the end of this movie.
Yeah,
it's a little odd to me.
Yeah, but I don't know. But I love the mythology. I love the fact that we have a movie that takes purely on Cybertron. You're right. I do want to see what's going to happen with the civil war between these two different factions. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. They're playing this as a trilogy, so we'll see. What's your rating for this?
It looks like trash. It offended me as it offended my childhood idea of Optimus Prime. I gotta go B-.
I'm going to go the opposite way. I see your points. But there's enough here for me to enjoy it. But honestly, I do see your points. That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But
thanks for placating me.
But there's a lot here that I did enjoy. I'm gonna go B+.
Okay, cool. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. So yeah, those are our thoughts on Transformers 1. So let's go ahead and recap the movies that we discussed on this episode. We started with Beetlejuice. Me and Brad gave that a B-. We move over to Rebel Ridge, one of the best action thrillers of the year. We both gave that a B+. Speak No Evil, I think, surprised both of us with a B+. from me and Brad, one of the best movies, better movies of the year. And Transformers 1, we split on that. I give that a B+. Brad gave that one a B-. So, with that, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies. It's all right, man. It's okay.